sweet ass confidants, my beautiful, educational, emotional, and sensitive confidants. Welcome to Confidently Insecure, the podcast where we are absolutely sure we don't know everything. And you know, I'm really excited for this episode because not only is it going to help me, I think it's going to help you confidants. We've got two amazing boss bitch, badass, intelligent TikTok queens, podcast host extraordinaires of the Anxious Like You podcast, which is just popping off, you guys. I mean, like, congrats. I'm so excited to welcome licensed therapist Micheline and Nadia. Woo! I said it right.
Yes.
Nadia. Not Nadia and not Nadia. Welcome to the pod, you guys. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. That was the best introduction we've ever had.
Yeah. I really like to gas up my ladies, but also you guys are just that bitch. You know what I mean? Like, you guys are just that cool.
Love it.
Well, thank you for making us feel that way.
Oh my God, of course. So I went on Anxious Like You. I was so honored. I couldn't believe it. I'm like such a fan of y'all's TikTok content. But can you guys, how would you like introduce yourself to someone who's never downloaded TikTok before? Like, how would you say all your LMFTPDQ LMNOPs?
I don't tell people I'm a therapist outside out in my real life.
Oh my God, because they'll start asking questions.
I mean, my family knows and friends know, but like if I meet someone new, unless they ask, it's like there was that TikTok. I don't know if you saw it, which is like, oh, when people ask, I'm an accountant.
Oh, do you seriously say you're an accountant?
No, I don't, but I had to like back up and I was like, what a good idea. I should say I'm an accountant.
No questions asked. I'm an accountant. I love that.
I so totally just own it. I like it. I like people getting worried around me. Like, is she analyzing me right now? What is she thinking? Yes. Or just jumping into those conversations. Obviously, I don't always do that, but yeah. I'll tell people.
And you guys are located in different places. Micheline, you're in Orlando. Shout out to Florida, all my Florida people. And Nadia, you're in Canada?
Yeah, I'm in Toronto.
Beautiful city, beautiful.
Yeah.
And you guys met through TikTok, right?
Yep, we did.
We'd love to see it. We love to see it. So how did you guys decide to start Anxious Like You?
So it's a funny story, actually. And I think it's funny when we talk about it because I remember wanting to start a podcast really badly. And I was too anxious
naturally
to do it by myself. Right. And I was like, I really want like a co-host. I want somebody who's like, you know, like me, you know, who's talked about like similar issues that I have so that we can relate, bounce off of each other. And I had met Nadia on TikTok and we had, you know, copied some videos of each other and like tagged each other and like had chatted a little bit. And then one day
Micheline is so nice. I copied her videos. Oh, she wouldn't even say it. I fully copied videos.
Content sharing queen.
She's so nice.
That's great. Like some women would be like, oh, how dare she? But you were like, I love you and come do a podcast with me.
well, first of all, she gave me like proper credit anyway. It wasn't like she stole my content.
We love to see it. That's important.
But no, it is very important. Yes. But I remember wanting to start a podcast and thinking, I really don't want to do this by myself because one, accountability and two, anxiety. Yes. And so I remember thinking there was like, I loved her content and loved, you know, how she just seemed like a genuinely nice person. And we had chatted a little bit. And so I have the text message, I think if I like scroll back, but I sent her like a paragraph. Message. I felt like I was asking her out on a date. I was like, okay, you don't have to say yes. There's no pressure, blah, blah, blah. But I want to start a podcast. Da, da, da. And then I waited. I hit sent and I'm like,
oh my God.
Then Nadia responded.
Yes,
and right away, I was like, yes, exact same story.
Thank God. You didn't leave her on red. You didn't leave her waiting. That's a true friend. I love that.
So excited. Yeah.
And are you guys like amazed, not surprised, shocked, don't care at all about your success, like your booming viral success on TikTok?
It's I'm like at a loss for words. I think at the end of the year, it was like December or something. And I was like, okay, I need to take a step back and think about everything that went like well this year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was awesome. It still seems surreal that it's happening.
So wow, because you're in it. You're like in it right now. Like you guys are just like, oh fuck, going more and more.
Yeah, like who would have thought like therapy talk or therapy TikTok would be a thing. Like
fucking we both I did. I've been trying to say that for years. Just kidding.
Yeah, it's crazy because like, you know, you post a video and if it's like people resonate and then you blow up overnight, which is essentially what happened to both of us. And it's like, you don't know what to do with yourself. So here we are.
Well, I know, Micheline, we talked prior, you have a private practice, and Nadia, you work in a, like, what would you call it? Like a private practice? Wellness.
Yeah, it's a private practice. Right now I have 4 other therapists working with me as well, and 2 dietitians.
Which is like so awesome. It's like a one-stop shop. But have you guys seen your personal business, like therapist business, just like take off? Are you like, oh fuck?
Yeah.
Because
there was a time where I couldn't keep up with consultations. Yeah. And I had to hire like a virtual assistant.
Congrats. That's the status you want to get to, hiring a virtual EA. Hell yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely like, I can't complain. It's been amazing. I think TikTok, I've told everybody, I'm like, as much as TikTok pisses me off sometimes and then like makes me happy, it's like a love-hate relationship. I am so grateful for it. Because it totally shifted my career. Yeah.
And I wonder, like, do either of you have a feeling about the fact that you have like a very prestige, considered traditionally like medical-ish job, like in the light of, you know, modern America? And I remember, like, I had a doctor friend of mine say, like, oh my God, she would never get on TikTok. It's so unprofessional. Like, she won't be dancing around to like things, like she's on a board. And if they ever saw that, and I was like, okay, sure, lady. But do you guys seem to just like not give a fuck about that.
No.
I literally don't give a fuck. I mean, if I could dance, I like, no hate to people that do dance. I fully would do dancing videos to incorporate. I just can't dance.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I recorded The Renegade like 65 times and never posted it because I can't dance either. But like, I'm totally, and I heard people say that. Like I judgment at the beginning, they'd be like, you're a therapist on TikTok, and I was like, yeah, I'm a fucking therapist on TikTok.
Hell
like,
yes,
why not? But look at the community now.
Yes, I was gonna say, anyone that's trying to drag like breaking stigmas and opening up conversation, like, you're an asshole. Like, you should go to therapy if you're giving shit to anybody in the mental health space that's being. And I think it has something to do with the fact that you're also both like young modern women. Like, you're totally harnessing
everything to do with the fact that we're young women. Yeah. That's what I see, at least. The amount of hate based on age, gender, what I'm wearing. Actually, on TikTok, that's the most hate of what I'm wearing in my videos. Yeah.
Wait,
ridiculous.
Great.
I swear I wear turtlenecks in 90% of my videos, but the one where I'm showing like a little bit of boob, it's like, this is so unprofessional.
But God forbid a therapist have boobs. God forbid a therapist be a human, which like kind of nicely segues into what I wanted to do with you guys today, which I've prepped some like fun, saucy, juicy behind the scenes of being a therapist questions. And then I've also gathered some like what I'm just calling human questions, which I think could help all of the confidants. So if you guys are ready, I don't know, like, if like, I don't know, maybe you both have the same answers, different answers. And of course, since we're talking about therapy, if I ask anything that's like, I can't fucking talk about that or say that, like, you get to pull that card, like, right? You just get to be like, client attorney privilege or whatever it's called. Okay. So I'm going to start y'all with softball, let you in gently. I'm not going to just like hammer it home, but like, how do you know you like your client? Do you call them clients? Is that about patient?
Okay, so we had this conversation on a live the other day because a client of mine said that he would prefer to be called a participant. And I was like, that is so good.
I love that.
Yeah, because they're not clients, because it's like business transaction, and they're not patients, because like if we're looking at them from like a strength-based perspective and not like this, like something's wrong with you that needs to be fixed, then let's call them. But anyway, participants, I was like, I'm adopting that. I'm trying to use that more often. But how do you know if you like them?
Like, do you know right off the bat? Like, are you able to see straight through their brain holes because you're like, I've been doing this so long? Okay.
No. Well, I think it's like any other relationship. You have to develop rapport with somebody. And we we know that there's some people that you just like have an instant, just like in normal life, like some people you just have an instant like connection, like you vibe right away. And there's others that may be a little bit more reserved and take some time. So sometimes it just takes like one session and like you're like, yes, this is like, I can't wait to work with this person. And then sometimes it takes like 2 or 3 sessions until they open up. And sometimes it's not a good fit, and that happens.
Right.
And
we're going
it
to
doesn't
ask about
happen
that
often, but when it does happen, you can sense that there's like either the client or participant doesn't feel connected to you, aren't opening up too much. And then that's a whole conversation with that's for me personally. But
yeah, I agree with that. And I was speaking to Micheline about this before, and I'm not trying to sound so cliche or annoying, but the second a client sits in my chair, all judgment is gone, and it's out of my control too. It's not even like I try to do it and not judge the person, but like I'll judge my friends, I'll judge like past exes or people in my life. But the second someone becomes a client or participant and sits in my chair, it's just all of that.
That is beautiful to hear. Like I think that so many people need to hear that version. And like, I know I'm always mentioning it, and I think I've talked about it on the podcast before, but You Really Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb was such a unique peek behind the curtain. It's about a therapist who goes to a therapist, and you kind of like get to learn the meta deep dive holes of like what that's like. But hearing that like you guys are human, I think is every therapist's want, but is every participant / client's easiest forgotten fact of the relationship is like, I see you at this time every week, and you just apparate between sessions. You don't exist out in the world, right?
Yeah.
We think about them all the time. Like I think about my clients all the time. Like I'll be watching something and think of like, oh, that was a conversation with this person and this would be helpful. Let me send this video, or let me send this song, or this book that I'm reading might be really good for this person. And so I'll like email or send a quick text like, hey, have you checked this real quick? It might help.
That's amazing. And that's also good to hear. I think people need to know that it doesn't have to just be 45 minutes once a week. Right? Like almost
goes beyond that.
Yeah. Like, and it can kind of also be whatever you want it to be, where like, okay, I'm not doing the format of what I would say where I would ask you questions. Okay, here we go. Back to therapist questions. How do you, what's the question? Do you Google your clients?
No.
Never?
That is so unethical.
We're not allowed.
Not allowed to.
You're not allowed?
It creates a bias in our mind.
Right.
It's impossible not to. So if we're Googling our clients and we're seeing something that they haven't brought up to us or that we didn't know, automatically it's in our head. It crosses so many lines.
Because then if you say something, right.
Yeah. But we can't.
Because I think like that's the fear, right? Is that you would drop any knowledge that you read or saw.
Yeah.
Right. Or if I have a client that's talking about that's talking about something with their ex, and then I see a picture of them and their ex together, and the participant's not comfortable telling me they got back with their ex, but in my mind, it's just a whole tangled web of things that should be avoided. Yeah.
Okay, how do you get over the lying to your therapist thing?
Okay, so what do you mean by like people lying to us? Or
because like once you develop a good relationship with a therapist and you don't want them to know you got back with that shitty toxic ex, like how can you convince yourself like, no, this is not a person I'm trying to impress? Like how do you turn that off?
You have to constantly remind yourself. Yeah, it's a great question. And I think like at the end of the day, I think there's always like a fear of judgment, like even if it is your therapist. And, if everyone in your life has always judged you for getting back with certain people or being in certain relationships, it's only natural that will also come up in therapy with your therapist. And especially because a lot of people really want their therapist to like them.
Right. So, fuck yeah.
You want them to like you. I'm sure, like, I mean, me as a therapist who goes to therapy, I've always wondered, like, what's my therapist like me? So I get that. But I think, you have to take a step back sometimes and remind yourself that I can't get help if I'm not being honest.
Right. I've lied to my therapist. Without a doubt, I've lied to my therapist. But then I'm like, what am I going to therapy for? And obviously the lie is a reason that it's a lie. So it's something that's big.
Right. It's something you actually can then work through like as an exercise. That's really funny. Okay. Another question. Has anyone ever said anything in a session where you're just like, oh my fucking God, holy shit, but you can't react and you feel like I didn't learn this in school? Like, I think the one people are thinking of is like someone admits they murdered someone, right? And it's like, does that happen as often as we think?
I haven't had someone thankfully tell me that they murdered someone because I'm pretty sure I would shit myself, but I have been in a position where I was like, what the fuck do I do now?
Really?
Yes. Because
you just gave me chills for some reason. That made me so anxious for you.
Yeah, because you want, like, if you truly care, like you could be like a deadbeat therapist and just be there like,
right.
collecting your paycheck and just whatever. Or you could truly care and want to help. And I think this used to happen more often when I first became a therapist. It still happens from time to time where you're like, that was a bomb that somebody dropped. And how do you deal with this? Because I've never had this situation, not because I'm judging them or because I think that it's like, oh my God, you're so fucked up that you can't help. But it's more of like, how am I supposed to help with this? Like,
right.
Yeah.
Like,
same.
I'm human. And so then it's like all of this anxiety does come up in sessions sometimes. And
my very first moment of that was dealing with somebody who was experiencing psychosis, and they're in the middle of psychosis. And I was not advanced enough in my career or trained in that to even be working with that person, but it was like a government job. And that's when I was like, okay, what do I do? How do I help this person?
Right.
Really hard.
Psychosis is actually a pretty deep passion of mine. It's not something I personally experience, but have loved ones in my life where I say it as a joke because I use humor to like cope with like the fuckery of life. Right. But I remember the first time I saw real psychosis, manic psychosis, not hypomania, not like someone on drugs, like just genuine, pure brain psychosis. I remember thinking to myself, oh, I thought I knew what like the worst of mental health was, looking at my own experience of like panic attacks. Like I thought panic attacks were like as bad as it gets. I'm making air quotes. But then I saw psychosis and I was like, oh, I should be grateful. But then I also feel like that's a fucked up taboo line to draw in the sand where it's like, oh, well, if you're over here, at least you're not psychotic, mentally ill, because some psychotic people are like the best people in my life. But I can't imagine being in a professional setting, not knowing what to do. Cause like you go to the doctor to get help. And then like, if a doctor's like, we can't help you, you're like, where do I go next? Right? Like, how did you handle that?
At that time, I was a case manager. I wasn't actually a therapist. So I did refer them to a therapist within our program. It was for individuals experiencing alcohol and drug abuse and use. So referred out. I had to. I mean, I was still their case manager, helping connect them to resources wherever they could. I wasn't their actual therapist, but referred
I mean, do you believe in the idea that kind of like people in psychosis have to hit a rock bottom to want to help themselves?
I don't know. I haven't worked with that population enough to know. With who I have worked with, it wasn't rock bottom, but they were willing to get help. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
It's I've seen it where it's been like, oh no, I know I need, like, you know, I'm someone who's sober. So I know that experience with alcohol. I was like, oh no, I know I'm fucked up. Like, I know I need this. But before I go on to the next question, how do I help my own self and maybe society stop drawing that line in the sand where we're like, every bitch has anxiety and depression and panic attacks. Like, who doesn't? But schizophrenia, DID, bipolar, that is like very, like, how do we get it more spectrumy of thought rather than good and bad diagnoses?
I think just, you know, talking more about it and like understanding more about it. I think there are lots of, like, especially if you guys are on TikTok, like TikTok creators with schizophrenia and with different mental health disorders, and they're not talked about enough, like DID, dissociative identity disorder, which used to be called multiple personality disorder, schizophrenia. You know, all of those typically stem from some sort of traumatic experience in childhood. And, you know, most of the people that suffer with severe severe mental health issues are not dangerous, and I know that our media likes to, when
those fucking movies
come up and all this stuff, it's like, oh, this person was struggling with and I think that gives it a bad name. So I think one of the ways to like not have that line in the sand is to see humans as humans and just say like, hey, this is something, this is a symptom of something. And
I say that all the time.
Yeah. It's not like, and it's not like they're dangerous or they're going to hurt you. So, it's just like anything else. Like the more you put yourself out there and inform yourself and expose yourself to these things, the less they're going to be scary to you.
Yeah. Like I said, my favorite people have kind of the more what society would deem like scarier things. And it takes like going through it once to really be like, okay, no one died. We're all okay. Like, here's what we can do next time. Make a plan. But, I don't know if that's words of encouragement for anyone out there or not. But okay, moving on. This was a fun one because I talked to my therapist last night and I was like, what would be a good question to ask these ladies? And she was like, she's also a young lady therapist. And she said it's always the worst when a client hits on you and you have to, like, you can tell there's like a flirtation or so. Micheline, you're laughing. Like, how do you deal with it? Tell me the stories. How do you deal with it?
I had a story. Okay. So this was one of the, oh shit moment. What do I do with this? So it kind of like mixes in that question because I had a client who would talk about, which is very common actually, like sexual fetishes and all of that stuff. And, but the client was very like, had a lot of shame internally because of that. So, at one point they hit on me and they said, well, you're extremely attractive and sexy. And, at that moment, I kept I had to keep my therapist face. And I was just like, and I remember like, I just like kept letting them say whatever they needed to get out. And then I was like internally like, oh shit, what the fuck do I do? Is there a chapter about this? Like, what do I do? Like, I've never thought I would encounter this. What do I do? And I'm like, remember what they taught you when you don't know what to say, just like ask questions or reflect. And so like, I kind of like, I don't know how I maneuvered my way out of that one, but then I got my I had a supervisor at the time and I was like, this is what happened. What the fuck do I do with this information? And so she was like, it happens. Like, you're a young woman, it's going to happen. And, as long as they're not like continuously doing that, have that boundary conversation. And it never happened again. Like, we got past it in the session.
Yeah. You didn't give them what they maybe were fishing for. So they knew, okay.
Yeah. And if I felt like it was getting there and if it was like, interfering with treatment, then I would have to refer out.
Right.
But since it wasn't, and it was that one-time thing, and I think this person just felt like they needed to get it off their chest.
Right.
And so they did. And
you were like, I love that you like were like, oh, thank you. I would have been like, oh my God, me? Stop.
No, I was like freaking out inside. I was like, oh, what am I supposed to do in this? This is not like not what I got trained for my internship.
Yeah, right? Oh my gosh.
What
about you, Nadia?
No, like not similar experience in that. It's never happened to me, actually. I know. Yeah. Most of my clients are young women. Yeah,
I was going to say, I'm like surrounded by young women everywhere in my life. And so I rarely get like negative comments that I have to delete. Like people are like, how do you deal with the online hate? I'm like, I don't know. My audience is amazing. They don't fucking fuck with me. They hold me accountable, but like, I'm okay with that. My therapist last night was saying something about how she could like pull rank because she was also in the military. So she would always just be like, that would be inappropriate or whatever, like she could blame it on something else, which I feel like you could probably do that too, right? With you, what you guys do, you could be like, it would be inappropriate as a doctor participant relationship.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Very funny. I thought this was an interesting one because I got a little bit of a gripe with these young therapists in training that I've run into in my experience. I've been in therapy for a very long time. That's when my hair looks like the way it does. but I had a center I was going to where, you know, the main psychiatrist you see once a month, and you go see the psychologist, and then you see these therapists, and sometimes they had to like switch them out for the therapist in training. And 2 times I had a therapist in training fall asleep on me. And 1 time I had a therapist, actually I could see through the lobby in his office, just passed out on his chair, and there was no one else in the office. And I was like, I'm here for my appointment. Like, do y'all be sleeping between appointments? Are you guys napping? What the fuck?
Okay, hold on. I must say I nap between clients sometimes.
Okay, human.
Between clients.
Mm-hmm.
But if a therapist falls asleep on you,
they're exhausted, right?
Bye. Fire them.
Oh yeah, fully
still,
dead.
That's your job. Is tired. Other people are tired. That's not a reason. Yeah. That's not okay.
Yeah.
It only took 3 times in my baby, like early 20s, young journey of like not being able to speak up for myself to be like, oh, this is not good and appropriate, and you guys should probably work on your workload if you're falling asleep.
Yeah.
I had to imagine they were college students, like just exhausted, like,
well, just so you know, like the internship for becoming a therapist, like when you're in graduate school, is not a fucking joke.
Yeah,
it's off. Like you don't get paid, and you're working. You usually have to do like 30 hours a week, so people have a job on the side. So I remember working like 60, 70 hours a week trying to get through college so that I could have my hours that I needed in order to graduate. So I could see why, but it's not an excuse.
Sure.
It's like, hello. Are you listening to me? Like if your therapist is snoring, like
I know. I'm like, bitch, I'm entertaining. I got drama in my life. Maybe not to you as like a young male, but I think I'm fun.
How did they fall asleep on you? Like, would you look up and they were snoring?
Well, like I could see his eyes like rolling into the back of his head, and like he was using the headrest like very graciously, like as a pillow. And I just remember being like, oh, he's going to. And you know how sometimes they say silence is like okay to work through silence in the therapy room, which I still fucking hate because silence anywhere in life is very hard for me to stand because of my anxiety. But in that moment, I was like, I'm going to let him sleep.
Was it like out of people pleasing, or was it like-
yes, I was like, this poor young person is probably very tired, and like it didn't come off as bored, it came off as like exhaustion. Like he didn't look well.
It's nice that you had that mindset, but that can actually be like potentially dangerous for a client who's already feeling maybe unheard, low self-esteem, depression, whatever they're experiencing. To have their therapist fall asleep can be triggering. Yeah.
Well, so, you know, the caveat to that question was like, what are some tips and tricks they teach you in school? Because I've heard about like kind of scrunching your toes up can help like ground you and wake you back up. But what are some tips and tricks that we don't know that y'all do to stay awake or paying attention?
I'm just thinking, I didn't have that class. Like,
I was thinking the exact same thing. I was never taught how to stay awake. It was kind of just
it's like, you better fucking stay awake. Like do you ask surgeons, like, hey, do they teach surgeons how to stay awake while they're going through heart surgery? Like,
no, they're all just doing cocaine. I can attest to a lot of my surgeon friends. Well, that's Los Angeles though.
Oh my goodness. No, I don't know. I've never.
If you are working for the government or you're working for like a nonprofit and they are giving you like 12 clients a day, sometimes 8 clients a day, then that's a different story because you're being overworked, underpaid, and it's not fair at all. And that happens a lot. One of our like mutual therapist friends from TikTok was telling us that she would see like 8 clients a day, and that's plus note taking. She's probably working like 9-10 hours a day doing that. And it's
what's normal amount of clients per day? Like what's a good healthy amount where you're like successful like, and like
no more than 5? I would say like 4 or 5. I personally burn out at more than 4 a day.
Yeah.
So because I mean, it also depends on your specialty too. Like for me, I see people with complex PTSD, complex childhood trauma. So I can't like, there's a lot of heaviness there. And so for me to see somebody, you know, with that.
Oh, is your Alexa listening to us? How?
Alexa told me somebody was at the front door. Sorry.
Is everything okay? Were you expecting a visitor?
No, I'm not expecting a visitor. It's probably some delivery. I'm like, just drop it off. Like you don't have to ring the doorbell.
For some reason, the first thing in my mind I thought of was maybe someone was sending you a pizza. And I don't know why that would have happened.
I would really enjoy a pizza.
Let me get your address, girl. I'll send you a pizza. You deserve it. You see 5 clients a day. We need more women like y'all. Shit.
But yeah, as I was saying, like if it's like intense stuff like psychosis or then it's not easy. If even like somebody with anxiety, like it's a lot to deal with. If you're dealing with like relationship problems and like
you're like who doesn't?
Yeah, like exactly. And that's not as intense. So maybe you can see a little bit more. But personally, I'm like, there was a time I saw like 6-7 clients a day and I was dead.
Yeah.
Oh God.
I feel like I'm always doing damage control, but also if you're a client, it's not your responsibility that we get tired.
No. Like that's amazing.
Right? Like if you're listening and you're like, oh my God, is this heavy stuff that I tell my therapist? Because I get that question a lot. It's not on you. This is our profession. We know what our max is. We know what we can handle.
And well,
that's exactly.
Yeah. No, go ahead.
That's exactly why I don't see more, because I'm like, I never want to make a client feel like they're not 100% a priority for me. And so if they're coming in and they're feeling my exhaustion, I'm causing damage.
Right. Well, I was going to say, not with that light, honey. Your camera's making you guys look like glow from the inside out. I told you, it's like celebrity superstar camera vision over here. I'm like, man, I should have put on some concealer to talking to you motherfucking pretty bitches. No, but I think you bring up a really good point. Like what, it's not damage control. It's great for people to hear this stuff. I think like I have to imagine there's nothing you probably anticipate the things you're talking about are heavy to handle when it's like, no, you guys are literally therapists who help people through the most intense and Micheline, I know in your TikTok profile, it's like trauma informed, which I think is really amazing that you put that, because I don't know that people even know what that means. So can you tell me just like briefly what that entails of being like a trauma informed person?
Yeah. So trauma informed pretty much means that you've had training and, you understand like how trauma impacts people. So one of the things, and I always like have to like preface this, because one of the most popular types of therapy that we have out there is called cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. And there is a trauma informed version. I'm making air quotes. Trauma informed version of that. But it's, in my opinion, it's not very trauma informed. So what trauma informed pretty much means is that you understand how the impact of childhood experiences and every experience, even in adulthood, impacts not only your thought process, but your body, your nervous system, and how that sometimes means it's manifesting as a disorder, but that it's not necessarily a maladaptive response. So if you're having constant like catastrophizing thoughts, what CBT would say, hey, this is a maladaptive thought process. Trauma informed perspective would say that was an adaptive response for a very long time that's no longer helpful.
It feels a little bit more like of the times as we continue to understand the mind-body connection.
Yeah.
I learned a lot of that shit from you bitches. I'd be like, oh my God, that's why my back hurts. I'm kidding, but like kind of not, right? Like, does it feel more progressive?
Yeah, it just, there's a lot of more research coming out and like different types of approaches, and trauma-informed perspective really backs away a little bit on diagnosis and really focuses on, the adaptive responses that manifest as what we call diagnosis.
Right.
So it's less
beautiful.
Yeah, it's less about, hey, what do you have, and more about like what led you to be here and how can we work through it to reverse and process the past.
Queen, snaps, because I cannot tell you the amount of time I get asked all the time, like, what's your diagnosis? Like what, you're coming to talk about your book or whatever, like how, you guys never sent me your address, by the way. I need your address so I can send you a book. Side note, see my ADHD brain. But like, the fact that some people get a diagnosis and it becomes their identity, it becomes all encompassing. And I used to kind of shit on like IOP or like treatment centers that I worked with that would say like, we don't really give diagnoses. We're like here to kind of treat what caused it. And I'd be like, yeah, but then people are up in the air and some people need more complex like understanding of what is chemically happening in their brain. But that's not with a name. That's not with a tabooed like label that society deems unhireable or unmanageable or unrealistic, right?
And don't get me wrong, like sometimes like, yeah, I do diagnose and I do give people, because I think it also depends a lot on the person. Like there's sometimes where a diagnosis will give you a starting point. So I'm not going to say, no, I diagnose people in my practice, you know, and it's just about more, what I tell them is this is how your trauma is manifesting. So like, this is if you have generalized anxiety or social anxiety or depression or whatever, it's like, this is where your symptoms fall. So in the booklet here in my notes, I'm putting down generalized anxiety disorder, because this will give you an idea of what you're dealing with. And it'll give me a starting point in terms of like what we have to handle in terms of symptoms.
Well, that verbiage is so important.
Yeah. And that's empowering. In my opinion, that's really empowering. Especially when like, if you're somebody who has like a list of like 10 diagnoses, I would say go see a trauma-informed therapist, because usually like if you have like more than like 2 or 3, I would say, you know, something else is happening there underneath the surface that's like led to all of that. So it's just a good idea to always, you know, do, and people don't know what trauma is. Like a lot of people think trauma is like this huge like car accident.
You have to have been in a car crash.
Or war or like whatever. But it's like, okay, having emotionally neglectful parents and having, you know, or being bullied, or little things that like we call little. I'm not going to say they're little, but what people would consider little, like it's not a big deal. I should be over that by now. And that all adds up to become this huge like thing that causes symptoms.
And that's what's missing in our education and in our DSM and in pretty much everywhere. Like and trauma informed is progressive, but because there's not enough research out there, even promoting it is almost scary because of the evidence-based professionals. And like, no hate to them, I agree, it's science coming out and saying like, you can't be promoting this because there's not enough research or evidence on it. Being in practice and seeing it every single day and knowing like this is really what's happening. It's a fine line. It's
a double-edged sword. It's like you can't like do it without having it. You can't have it without doing it. Like, but I am grateful that like this is what the generation below me will have, as I'm like pointing to your squares in case I don't know where I am in your squares, but I was pointing at you of just like, that makes me feel so fulfilled. Cause I think the verbiage is so important. Like I said, you know, talking about like psychosis, I heard people start referring it to spiritual emergencies. And at first I was like, oh, fuck off. And then I was like, but wait a second, there's something to that. Like, there's a knowledge that could be caused by something, rather than psychosis just sounds so scary and like drug induced, or like your brain is broken and it's going to keep happening. And it's like, we don't fucking know. We don't have enough. We don't know. There's not enough studies about that stuff.
I think, the studying part, like what Nadia and like what you're mentioning, like that research and I mean, there's one book and maybe you've read it, I don't know, but like The Body Keeps the Score.
Love it.
One of my favorite books. And there's like the author talks about how they don't fund research that, you know, talks about things like this, because it's it's not necessarily because it's anti-pharma, because like medicine is necessary, really, and like he goes into that in the book, but it does shift things a little bit, and you know, and I think that book is eye-opening in terms of, you know, all of the trauma talk we talk about and on our TikTok pages, but it's just a different, you know, eventually I think it'll shift as more people start understanding it and more research comes out. But right now, like Nadia said, it is like a fine line. You have to be careful because, you know, when there's not enough information out there, people think that you're taking something away from them. And it's not like that at all. It's not like anyone wants to take away your diagnosis or something that made you feel like you're a part of a group or your medicine to deal with your mental health. That's always going to be around. But it's more about putting into perspective. Like we could have the gene for diabetes, but it doesn't have to manifest. We could have the gene for anxiety, but it doesn't have to manifest. So where's the trigger? And so that's really the perspective that I try to bring into.
It just changes. It just changes everything. It just changes the way you see yourself as, you know, broken, not broken. I got way off my questions because it was so beautifully said by what you guys were talking about. But I think before we switch over to just a couple of the human ones, I have like a funny little silly one of like, what are common things patients do that annoy the shit out of y'all? Like does us messaging you in the middle of the night is like, cut that shit out. Like talking on and on and on and never taking a break. Cause that's my guilty like pleasure is I just fucking talk sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, I forgot there's a person here who has like way more advice and perspective.
Good question.
Yeah, I'm gonna reframe that, and I'm gonna say,
okay, I love that.
Not annoy. No, but boundaries are important.
There she is.
So I think like not that we get annoyed. Like if somebody's in crisis and they need to text us, fine. Or if you talk a lot, my thought process in there is they probably have not been heard in their lifetime by people. So like just kind of allowing space for that, or like, bringing that into session, be like, hey, I noticed that you're doing that. But no, I don't get annoyed. What annoys me, actually, the one thing that does annoy me is being ghosted. I don't like being ghosted.
Are you talking about like being broken up with, but instead of actually being broken up with as a therapist, they just ghost you?
Just ghost you. And I haven't had that happen in a very long time. It used to happen more when I worked at the agency rather than like my private practice. But when it happened back then, I'd lose sleep over it, thinking that I was not a good enough therapist and that they didn't like me. So they left. And so like, I hate being ghosted. Just like, tell me you're leaving me. But yeah.
For me, I had somebody when I first started my private practice just be like, are you old enough?
Oh.
Why'd you book a session with me then? Like,
Jesus.
Yeah. And then said it again in email after the session.
Oh, fucking Christ.
Yeah.
That's like but that's got to be looked at as like a fun exercise for you. Cause you have to be like, okay, as a therapist, how should I approach this? Like ego death number one, it's them, not me. Like I have to assume there's a process you go through to dealing with like kind of more obnoxious behavior, or reframing it as stepping over boundaries behavior. But one of the human questions that I was going to ask was, oh yeah. So like moving away from these like kind of juicy questions and confidants, I hope you enjoyed that. And I think I was supposed to throw it an ad like to an ad like 20 minutes ago. So now we're going to go to an ad. Confidants, y'all know I believe in products that make you feel good, which is why I'm telling you about Care of, baby. Care of is high quality vitamins formulated with feel good for you clean ingredients that are backed by science, because we believe in science, baby. And Care of makes it super easy with personalized subscriptions delivered straight to your door each month, contact free, so you never have to worry about running out. I keep my Care of vitamins in my desk drawer. I take them with my daily crazy head pills and my vagina health pills. And the Care of now has an app that allows you to track your routine. First, you just got to take Care of's in-depth online quiz, which asks you questions about your diet and lifestyle, health concerns. Like for me, I wanted to manage my chronic pain and obviously my anxiety. And doing this quiz is like getting a holistic one-on-one consultation without having to leave your house. So spring, get it because it's almost spring, into a healthy mindset and lifestyle. Begin to focus on your health as we make our way out of that winter hibernation, baby. We bears no more and into warmer weather like the spring little chickens that we are. For 50% off your first Care of order, go to takecareof.com and enter code CONFIDENT50. That's right, for 50. That's half off your first Care of order. Go to takecareof.com and enter code Confident50. And we're back from that ad. Wow, that was such an incredible ad. But I did want to ask like just a few kind of overarching general questions that might help our confidants, because I do think they are kind of things that a lot of people are dealing with right now. But I did want to like circle back really quickly though about the like breaking up with a therapist, because how do you break up with a therapist? Because I always used to blame my insurance. I would always just be like, I can't afford it.
I personally don't care what it is, as long as like you just tell me.
Right.
I feel like it's really cool if you're like that, and I don't think this happens often at all, but like if you're like, I don't think we're a good fit, or I don't feel like I'm making enough progress, because as a therapist, I would like to know that, so that I know that I have to shift something within my practice if I'm not helping you. But when you ghost, you don't know. But I never ever, I mean, as a therapist, I have ghosted many therapists. So I am like, getting off my high horse for a second.
No, but you see the things in people you hate about yourself. That's what they say, right? It's like, this motherfucker did it because I do it.
Exactly. I think I've ghosted like 3 therapists, and I get why. Why.
Yeah.
Do you have like a preferred way of being broken up with? Like, is there an answer that makes you feel okay?
Yeah, I like, even if it's a text, like, hey, I'm going to have to cancel my sessions from now on. I'll call you when I need you. Or I found another therapist. Like, I don't care what it is, as long as I know you're not coming back, because one, I can remove, I can close out the file, right, and I can have that. I know that I have that opening and I don't have to keep saving it, for instance.
Right.
So,
it's like paperwork stuff.
And it's like processing too. Like it's sad. I don't know about you, but like for me, I get sad when my clients leave me, because like I said, I really like my clients.
Right.
And so like when they leave, like I've had times where I've cried when they've left.
That's so sweet. If every fucking therapist doesn't cry when I leave now, I'm fucking fuming.
But I think that's such a good point that you really like your clients, because so many times after a session, I'm like, oh, I just want to be their friend. Like, oh, I wish we could just like go for coffee.
I know. Well, with both of you, I'm like, I like you both so much. I could never be a client because I want to be a friend and I don't want to have to choose.
We struggle with that too. Yeah.
So much. Yeah. I have a couple clients that I'm like, man, that would be a really cool conversation to have over like,
or I have clients where I'm like, you and you would be such good friends.
Yes.
I wish I could make you guys friends.
Stop. That's the tea. That's the stuff we want to hear. Like, should you be a matchmaker?
You can't be. It's confidentiality. I wish.
Yeah. Oh, there's in that book that I keep bringing up, though, you should really talk to someone. There's like a story that you find, it's like a kind of a climactic reveal where you find out about this crossover of patients and you just see it coming from a mile away and you're like, oh shit. Oh! Had that happen to you where you're like, oh my God, I know who they're talking about, or like, or I don't know, something where
not my very first, but when I was working in a clinic, like early on, we're not allowed. Conflict of interest is seeing 2 people who know each other, friends, family. After like 3 sessions, I realized I was seeing a married couple.
Oh, but different
they never mentioned it. Yeah, they never mentioned that their wife came to me or their husband. I had to call my college right away. And I was like, what do I do? Because I just realized right now that they're married. I had no idea. Different last names, like everything different. The clinic didn't know it was like a medical clinic. So I had to keep the one that had seniority that had the first appointment with me, and I had to let go of the other one. Yeah. But that was the most
what was it that like connected it for you?
They both told me about an upcoming trip. And I was like, and it was a very specific thing that they were doing. And in this middle of a session, I was like, holy shit.
Partner. And you had your therapist face on, just like,
Yeah. And then at the end of the session, right away, I called my college and I was like, what do I do? And
I always tell my partner, if we ever break up, I'm keeping our couples therapist. Like, I love her so much. I'm like, I get it. I claim her. She's mine. Well, shit. We've been talking for an hour. I didn't get to like any human questions, but that's just because you guys are so great and jazzy, and you're just going to have to come back, or we'll have to do a live maybe and like answer a bunch of fan questions, because we did have some good stuff just about like the panorama happening and, you know, like how to emotionally balance all of these like mass shootings and like really heavy stuff that I do think like everyone needs to kind of hear from a professional about how to deal with. But you guys are just so lovely. Will you please just plug where everyone can find you, all your stuff? I want everyone to go follow you right now.
Sure. On Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, I'm Micheline Maalouf. And Twitter, I don't use that, so don't worry about it.
It's a toxic place. Don't go.
But that's it. Yeah.
Love that. I am Evolve and Bloom on everything.
I love Evolve and Bloom, like the flower. Did you just have like flowers all over your office and shit?
Yeah, everywhere.
Love it. And like events, you already have a theme. Like, that's great for you. Good job branding. And then also listen to Anxious Like You, because
like what the hell? Like, this is our newest thing. I'm sorry. Listen to our podcast, Anxious Like You, anywhere you stream. That's like the newest venture. So like,
right. You got to get used to putting it on your
podcast
docket
right now.
Yeah.
So
Well, you two separately are so fantastic. Like together, it's just even better. Like I can't think of a more fun scenario of getting advice from like two intelligent, trauma-informed, fun, and now viral, bitch. Fucking therapist. I love that for you guys. But promise you'll come back or we'll do a live or something fun.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much.
Awesome, guys.
Love it.
It was so fantastic to have you guys. Confidants, don't forget to go rate this 5 stars. You'll find all of their info linked below. If you're going to rate it less than 5 stars, though, don't rate it at all because I'm very sensitive. And we will see you next week. Bye, confidants.